Hello, everybody. It took like 3 tries to get this stream going. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, hello. Let's see here. Let me get this on live chat. All right, so we are continuing today with The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me. That's me. New pen name, new release. If you'd like to get a copy on Amazon, you can. Links are down there in the doobly-doo. You have an ebook and a paperback. Also, it will be coming to other booksellers rather soon, probably in the next week. I'm just waiting on final approval from all of them. So it'll be up on Books A Million, Smashwords, all of that stuff. Also, you can get a signed copy from me. Links are also down there. The reason why international shipping is so expensive is because I will refund you anything that I don't use. Thank you, Derek, for becoming a member. I appreciate it. I lost my train of thought because I appreciate you so much. Anyways, the international shipping is for everywhere outside of the United States, Canada, Mexico, India, Europe, all of that. Anywhere outside of the US, and whatever I don't use on the shipping, I will return to you through a PayPal refund. So, yeah, getting started. We are on chapter 3 of the book, page 181, for those of you reading along at home. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. People want to be bowled over by something. 9 times out of 10, you might strike out. But that 10th time, that peak experience, is what people want. That's what can move the world. That's art. Haruki Murakami, translated by Philip Gabriel, south of the border, west of the sun. Chapter 3. The Walls of Tiryns. 1. With the aid of evaporated milk, Cy made it through his infant days. Marianne and Knuckles played mom and dad to the boy during the day, alternating caregiving shifts so that one could rest while the other babysat. And in the evenings, when they were on location and had performances to give, Father Time watched over the kid. No one ever considered turning the boy over to the authorities. For one, they knew he'd never be adopted, not looking the way he did. His condition would keep him a ward of the state until adulthood, and no one wanted that for the child. And, for second, they all assumed Knuckles had been right, that the mother, whoever she was, wouldn't have left him if she hadn't intended for the carnival to raise him. All right, hang on. I forgot a very important thing. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. But surprise reveal in 3, 2, 1. Oh, Lord. I look like I need to be on some kind of registry. Oh, okay, here we go. Father Time made for a decent, if nervous, caregiver. He'd sit by the baby's crib, which Knuckles had built with his own 2 scaled hands, and stare with anxious intent, awaiting Cy's every breath, like a desperate man eyeing a lottery ticket. Father Time could only assume that the child's seemingly labored breathing was part of his unique cyclopean existence. For the rest of us two-eyed folk, our noses sit between and slightly under our eyes. For Sai, his flat, wide nostrils had been placed directly below the eye, and Mother Nurture, with help from her medical texts, assumed his nasal passages were somehow impeded by the placement of his eye. Furthermore, the baby never cried tears. Oh, he cried aplenty, especially when hungry, but his eye remained dry, and it was also assumed by Mother Nurture that he'd been born without tear ducts. She dove into her texts and found a history of Egyptian eye care circa 1550 BC, consisting of products she could still find today in 1932. The drops were given to Sai 3 times a day, or as needed anytime his eye became bloodshot, or when his eyelids stuck to the eye itself. His care routine kept everyone on their toes, but no one complained. As the boy grew, so did his horn. The rutted and rigid growth ended from above his eye, curving up and back, and it became horribly apparent in his estimated 6 months of life that if something were not done, the horn would pierce the soft spot on the top of his cranium and would likely, eventually, kill him. Mother Nature supposed the horn was not unlike fingernails and would grow constantly, perhaps even after the boy's death, as the nails and hair of corpses were known to. While the horn was stiff, it had some give to it, if squeezed hard enough, and it seemed, after some poking and prodding with Marianne's sewing needles, that Cy couldn't feel the growth. If he did, the child had an uncanny tolerance for pain. One or the other. Sandoval, of all people, came up with the solution, suggesting the sanding down of the horn, little by little, instead of going with Hank's suggestion to just cut the damn thing off. Poor Hank. He'd never lived that one down. So it was that Cy's horn was sanded nightly, less than a centimeter a day, until the tip was blunt and rounded. Over the course of the next 2 months, the jutting antler was reduced by half, and by the time Cy turned 1, it was less than 2 inches long. The day, as they say, had been saved. The terrible twos came on, and Cy toddled, as toddlers are wont to do, getting into everything under the sun. Cabinets were sealed with padlocks, and harmful poisonous chemicals like turpentine were kept far above the kid's reach. His curiosity knew no bounds, and though that would serve him well later in life, at present it was the bane of everyone's existence. Shortly after Cy turned 3, the circuit carried the carnival to Portland, Oregon. This was in 1935, the year Mickey Mouse was introduced to the world, and a woman named Amelia Earhart took her solo flight across the Pacific Ocean and into history. It was Knuckles' turn to watch the kid, and he was doing so from a folding chair placed alongside the geek show, so both he and the child could warm themselves in the mid-August sun. Hank and the other tent men, seeing as how they were good with constructions big and small, had produced several wooden toys for Cy. A rocking horse the boy rode like a true cowboy, a handful of whittled army men, and a paddle to which they had secured a bit of elastic string and a ball. Cy sat cross-legged in the straw a few feet in front of where Knuckles sat in his chair, hooded and becloaked, watching the boy play with the ball and paddle. When Knuckles realized that the boy had a keen sense of hand-eye coordination, Cy flicked his wrist at inhuman speeds, but the ball never once failed to strike the paddle dead center. The sound this created was akin to machine gun fire. "Ayo, Cy!" Knuckles called as he snatched one of the boy's army men from his chest of allotted wooden amusements. "Catch!" Knuckles sidearmed the tiny wooden figure. Cy's free hand shot up, lightning quick, and caught the army man effortlessly. All the while, the ball machine gunned against the paddle. Tat, 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 tat. Knuckles leaned back in his chair and grinned, saying, "Well, I'll be damned and dusted." When Marianne woke up, she joined Knuckles outside of the geek show, and Knuckles showed her Sai's newly discovered talent. By this time, he'd already thrown a dozen things at the boy: more army men, a rock or four, and even a baseball the tent men kept around with which to play stickball during downtime while the carnival was in session. "I'll be damned," Marianne murmured, obviously impressed. "That's what I said," Knuckles cackled. "Bet we could throw the world at the kid and he'd never miss a stroke of that paddle." "Could be. Too bad we can't sign him up for the American leagues. Can you imagine him playing for Brooklyn?"
"Why can't we? Once he's older, I mean."
"Come on, Nuck, you know why. Same reason you wear that damn hood, even when no one but family is around."
"Oh,"
was Knuckles' only reply. "I got him from here. You can go get some sleep before your show starts,"
"I'm okay,"
he said, still watching Sai nail the ball with that paddle of his, perfectly center, every damn time. "You sure?" she asked.
"Yeah, positive. I like watching him play."
"And I like watching you watch him play," Marianne thought but didn't say. Then, audibly, she added, "How about that?" Knuckles looked up at her, his reptilian eyes questioning.
"How about what?"
"Oh," she smiled. "Oh, nothing. Nothing at all." She squeezed his rock-hard shoulder. He didn't seem to notice, but she did. Oh yes, she did. Years later, on May 6, 1937, while attempting to dock at the Lakehurst Naval Air System, the Hindenburg burst into flames, killing everyone aboard. Then, on July 2nd, Amelia Earhart vanished while attempting her first trip around the world. Her last transmission came in shortly before 8:45 in the morning, and it was simply this: "We are on the line, 157337. To this day, neither she nor any trace of her plane have been found. Knuckles and Marianne, who'd been listening to the radio report of Earhart's disappearance. Let me start that over. Knuckles and Marianne, who'd been listening to the radio report of Amelia Earhart. Sorry, I keep getting stuck on that word. Knuckles and Marianne, who'd been listening to the radio report of Earhart's disappearance over coffee a week after the doomed flight and the pilot's final words, passed the message along to everyone, car by car, until the entire train had been notified. And when they told the truck drivers, and then they told the truck drivers when they arrived at their next stop, Warner Robins, Georgia. The carnival was one great murmur over the vanishing of a woman none of them knew, but all of them considered a hero. Outcasts knew their own, even if unintroduced, and they shared that branding with the woman pilot, who'd spent her entire life ignoring her detractors, those who said a woman could never achieve the things she'd set her mind to accomplish. Knuckles was in his car, hanging the newspaper announcement of Earhart's disappearance next to his copy of the front page announcement of the ill-fated Hindenburg docking, when Sai came running into his cabin car like a greyhound on the wheels of a rabbit. "What's that, Papa?" the boy screeched. Sai's voice would eventually level out and become bearable, but for now, his utterances were the proverbial nails on a chalkboard.
"This Sai is Amelia Earhart. She's a pilot."
Why she in the thingy?" Sai said, pointing to the front page picture of Earhart with wild hair, smiling despite the fact that her eyes were sad. Sai had noticed, even at nearly, but not quite, 6 years old. Her photo was under a picture of her plane, and below her was an image of her flight route. The headline read, "Faint signals heard from Amelia's plane." And under that, "Nation marks 161st birthday over weekend."
This is a newspaper. The Quincy Patriot Ledger, to be exact. She's in the paper because she vanished. Poof.
Knuckles balled his fists, then quickly flared them with a flourish, ever the showman.
Gone.
"How did she get gone?" Sai asked with a tilt of his head.
No one knows. It's the greatest mystery of our age.
"That's sad. Why's she sad? Is she sad because she disappeared?"
Is she sad, do you think?
Knuckles examined the pilot's photo.
She looks to be smiling to me.
"Sad people smile all the time," Sai said. I need a drink. Ugh. "Sad people smile all the time," Sai said. This struck Knuckles as a horrible truth for a child of Sai's age to have honed in on.
I suppose they do, Sai. I suppose they do.
"Like you, when Mother's around." Sai picked at his horn, a habit they'd been trying to break him of since he first realized it was there, around the same time he'd started walking.
Do you mean Quill, Sai?"
Knuckles asked, although he knew better. "Nope," Sai said in his quick, screechy way. "Mother Nurture. She always makes you sad smile. Where's Paper? I want to see if he wants to play catch with me."
He should be in the tent.
Knuckles said, meaning the Geek Show tent.
You say I sad smile when I'm around Mother Nurture?
"Yep," Sai cried as he raced from Knuckles' cabin car. Knuckles could only watch him go, rooted to the floor by Sai's final words. Sai exploded onto the midway, arms flailing wildly about him as he ran. He zipped past Lady Quill's tent, past the petting zoo, and between two food stands, fried everything on the right and fresh lemonade on the left. He came out the other side and made a beeline for the Geek Show, above which sat the omnipresent eye of Hank's Ferris wheel. Sai ducked through the flaps and dashed between the rows of folding chairs, up and over the stage, and into the dark performers' area behind the curtain. Paper, the living canvas, sat at the dimly lit vanity in the rear corner of the tent, reading the battered copy of Ulysses his sister had given him. Marianne had finished the book, as she'd promised Mother Nurture she would, then had passed along the bloated madfuck manuscript, her words exactly, to her brother. "What you reading?" Sai screeched. Paper, lost in the book, which he'd been thoroughly enjoying up until the moment Sai spooked the soul out of him, threw the novel into the air, shocked as he was. "Jesus Christ, Sai!" Peter Stout cried. You, you like to have murdered me just now. Sorry, did you want to play catch with me?" "I was reading," Paper said, a curious expression crinkling his tattooed features. He was looking skyward, wondering where the hell his book had disappeared to. There it is!" Sai nearly screamed. The boy pointed upward and to the right, to where the book had landed, draped over one of the support wires that ran from the pole at the center of the tent to the outer ring. "How am I supposed to get that?" Paper grunted. "Use your chair. When you're done, we can play catch." "Can't right now, buddy." Paper dragged his chair over to where the book dangled like a sheet drying on a clothesline. "I'm busy." "Busy reading?" Sai said. "Yes, reading and thinking." Sai stuffed his hands in his pants pockets and rocked on his heels. "What you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about returning you to your sender. Now go on. I have to get my damn book." "Okay, love you, Paper." "Love you too," Paper said, then added under his breath, "You little jerk." Paper held no animosity towards Psy, other than the fact that, like most bookworms, he hated to be disturbed while reading. Psy sprinted from the Geek Show tent, fortunately before he heard Paper's final comment, and flew along the concourse until he came to Hank and his wheel. The Ferris wheel, the biggest selling point of the Cortez family carnival, next to Knuckles' Geek Show, that was, never failed to instill in Psy a sense of wonder and awe. He felt an absurd, if understandable, kinship with the attraction, he and it sharing their unique, singular visions of the world at large. The boy even fantasized at times, mostly late at night, when he was supposed to be trying to sleep, that he would one day grow as large as the wheel, and he would stand over all creation, looking down on ant like people as they scurried from place to place about their lives. He didn't want to be a god. He only wanted to be as large as one. Hiya, Hank, Cy screeched. Hank, unlike Paper, had seen the boy coming and was prepared for the outburst. He laughed a quick, Hiya, Cy, in return. What you doing? Asked the boy. Hank held up a cigarette pinched between his brown fingers. Having a smoke before I check the wheels greased. What you doing? I need someone to play catch with. Can you smoke and catch, you think? I can barely walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. You know that. Cy tilted his head, an affectation he applied whenever he was confused. Why not? Bubblegum do something to your legs? Hank barked laughter, said, something like that. Let me finish this fag, then we can play, okay? Yes! The boy screamed. Hank cringed. It would be hours before his ears stopped ringing. While Hank smoked, Cy jogged back to Marianne's car to get his baseball, arriving only a second before he realized that the baseball he was looking to retrieve was actually stuffed into his back pocket. Giggling at his horrible memory, he ran back to the Ferris wheel to find Hank, smoke butted on the step beside him, sitting on the stairs that led up to the wheel's gondolas. Ready? Hank said. Yeah, I had the stinking ball in my back pocket the whole time. I ran back to Mom's car to get it, but here it is. Cy patted his back pocket. The whole time. Cy never stopped talking. Not the entire time they tossed the ball back and forth. He asked Hank about Emily Earhard and Amy Earnhardt and Melody Eggherder, and eventually Hank caught on to who the boy was talking about. He tried to correct him, but Cy was on to yet another topic of conversation with Mother Nurture, not my mom, Quill, because I have to make sure you know which one, because Knuckles didn't know who I was talking about when I said he sad smiled whenever he was around Mother Nurture, I mean, gave me a book about mytho, myth, mythology? Hank offered with a chuckle. Yes, mythology, Cy pronounced carefully. Did I say it right? Hank nodded, still chuckling. Good. She gave me this book about greasy gods, and I think it's just swell. Greasy gods? Hank said, confused, until a lightning bolt of realization struck him. You mean Greek gods? Yeah, from Greasy, Cy expounded. Boy, I love you, you know that? Hank said, laughing full on now. It's Greece, boy. Greek gods are from Greece, not Greasy. Cy tilted his head. But if they're from Greece, they have to be greasy, right? No, no, Hank said, cackling. His guffaws devolved into coughing, and Cy waited patiently while the man cleared a wad of phlegm from his lungs and deposited it into the straw at his feet. It spelled different. Hank then spelled both versions of the word, and Cy seemed to finally understand, even if his head still leaned to one side when he said, English is hard. I think I prefer Spanish. You know Mother Nurture is from Honduras? I think I said that right. She's from Honduras. I sound like Papa when I say it like that. Hank tossed the ball back. Cy caught it, and in the midst of returning it to Hank, continued. Anyway, she gave me a book on Greece and Greek gods, and it's just swell, Hank. Big words all over the place. I can't pronounce any of them, but Mother Nurture has helped me with that. Did you know that people like me, that people with only one eye, some folks don't believe they existed? I'm right here. That you are, boy. That you are. Hank lobbed the ball back. Cy missed it and ran after it. He dipped, snatched it from the straw, and threw it back. Some people don't think clay exists either. There's whole bunches of fiction books. Fiction means made up. That's what Mother Nurture says. But Clay isn't made up. He's a dwarf, but not like Tolkien's dwarves. He isn't a miner. I like Gimli's axe. He's neat. But Clay doesn't have an axe and isn't make believe, and neither am I. The ball went back and forth. Right. You both exist. I can attest to that. Why don't people believe in people like Clay and me, huh, Hank? Asked Cy. Hank was about to throw the ball back when his arm went limp under the weight of the question. Well, kid, Hank chose his words carefully. Some people only believe in what they can see, or have seen, I reckon. But there's a whole lot of folks who don't even believe what they see. They must be dumb, Cy said, holding that last word out longer than truly necessary to prove his point. Are there people who think you don't exist, Hank? Hank studied the back of his hands, the deep brown skin, then rolled them over to show the baseball in the center of one pink palm. Finally, he chucked the ball back and said, There are them what think. Again, Hank measured his words. Them that think I'm less of a man, yes. They know I exist, but that don't keep them from treating folks who look like me differently. Less of a man? Cy echoed. That's right, Hank said, and tossed the ball back. And this is a hard truth, but a truth all the same. That don't make me less, no matter how much they might think so. I'm just as real and whole as you are. I know that, Cy cried, as if Hank had assumed he was ignorant of the fact. Why don't people just mind their own business, Hank? Hank shook his head slowly, saying, I've been thinking on that question my whole dagburn life, Cy. My mama told me one time that just because folks think they're better than me, I should never, ever believe them. Said I shouldn't have to prove my worth to nobody, and I ain't never have. The right people will give you all the worth you'd ever need in all your days, but it's the worth you give yourself that matters, is how I see it. I'm worth the world, Cy screeched. Hank smiled. That you are, boy. Worth more than gold and then some. You gonna throw that ball back now, or should I light another fag? I think I'm done. Thanks for playing with me. You're welcome, Hank said, but Cy had already spun and run off to destinations unknown, likely to get under someone else's feet. God bless that kid, Hank said, and got to greasing his wheel. Ooh. If you're just now joining us, I am reading from The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me. New pen name. Go pick up the book. Links are down there in the doobly-doo. 2. Oh, forgot my readers. What'd you say, Derek? You look like the guy Bruce Willis goes to for the obligatory hacking scene between action set pieces. Fuck off. That's a good one, actually. 2. Night came, and the carnival, in turn, came to life with it. Rubes meandered and consumed, moving as a flock, from one attraction to the next, seeking worth for their coin. Lights and smells and sounds abounded. The glimmering eye that was the Ferris wheel, a light with multicolored lights. The aroma, the aroma of popcorn and hot grease. The bing of the test your strength machine and barkers bellowing. Every carnival was a living thing, but none breathed more fiercely and pulsed so loudly as a Cortez family carnival. Cy watched from the picture window of Mother Nurture and Father Time's cabin car, while Father Time worked calculations at his desk in the corner. The boy wanted badly to be a part of the show, had begged to be included on a multitude of occasions, but was always given the same response: "You're too young, Sai." Yet their refusal only made Sai more eager to be allowed to join the spectacle that was his family's carnival. "Father, please," Sai whined from the window. "Can I at least go out?" "No, Sai," Father Time said, not taking his eyes off his work. "We've talked about this." "Please," the boy pleaded. "No, Sai," Father Time repeated. Sai glanced over his shoulder, saw that Father Time, as per usual, was distracted by work, and formed a sneaky little plan. "I have to go to the restroom," he said. Father Time was no fool. "You know which outhouse you can use," meaning the outhouse the tent men had built on the opposite side of the train from the carnival. Ever since Sai had joined their ranks, a special outhouse had been constructed at each stop, one far away from the prying eyes of the rubes and normies that populated the carnival grounds while they were open for business. Sai's outhouse would then be torn down, its contents covered with a foot or two of dirt, only to be rebuilt at the next stop. The first porta-john wouldn't be available to the masses until 1940, when a dock supervisor in Long Beach, California, invented the portable toilet to increase his crew's efficiency. But, as has been previously stated, certain things existed long before they were invented, or should we say, patented. As the poets coined, "There's nothing new under the sun." Sai was of course aware of the placement of the outhouse, which was in plain view of Father Time, as seen through the porthole window next to his desk. All Father Time had to do was crane his neck in that direction, and he could easily see Sai coming and going. "But it stinks in there," Sai screeched. This was not a lie. It reeked something horrible in the cramped confines of his outhouse. Not that the public restrooms the carnival offered were any better, but they did have ventilation. Small slits around the edge at the top of the walls, whereas Sai's outhouse had nothing of the sort, not even a moon-shaped cutout in the door, like so many during that era did. "You know the rules, kiddo. It's the outhouse or nothing." "Nuts," Sai fumed. "Language?" said Father Time. "Sorry, Father. Are you going or not?" asked Father Time after a moment. "No, sir," said Sai, but this was all part of the plan. "I thought not," Father Time chuckled. Now, Sai knew, Father Time would suppose the boy's silence was due to him pouting, and would hopefully not find it strange that Sai had become so quiet. The boy sneaked away from the window and stealthily exited through the rear door of the cabin car, which remained open to allow fresh air to blow through the stuffy compartment. Knowing the first step on the car's rear landing squeaked worse than his own voice, Sai hopped from the platform, landing quietly in the straw below. He crept away from the train, far enough so that he could see into the car through the picture window. Father Time remained at his desk, head down, working his books. Good. Great. Everything was going to plan. Sai knew he would get in trouble eventually, because Father Time, although distracted, would eventually find Sai had vanished into the night. But Sai was also aware that the worst that would happen to him would be a restriction from his toys, and possibly even something he considered jail time, being unable to roam the carnival grounds while they were closed. His guardians never beat him, relying on his love of being out and about as significant punishment for his insubordinations, although those instances were few and far between, because, truth be known, Sai was a good kid, obedient to a fault, usually his. Sai assumed this was also why he'd been able to get away from Father Time this evening, because the man trusted him. That realization almost sent the boy running back to apologize to Father Time. Almost. Instead, he buried his angelic conscience in the basement of his mind and acquiesced to the demands of the devil on his shoulder, willing him to go, 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 while he still had time. Cy slithered between tents and booths, cloaked in shadow, feeling like Papa must feel in his hooded cloak, skirting the watchful eyes of those who ran the attractions and the rubes drifting from amusement to amusement. He was nearly spotted coming out from between the fried everything and fresh lemonade booths by a young couple holding hands coming up the concourse. The girl's eyes shot wide at the sight of Cy, and she pointed, stuttering something Cy couldn't hear, but her teenage beau ignored her, had his head cocked away from his girlfriend, eyeing the fried everything concession. By the time she got his attention, Cy was gone, disappeared into the thin alley that ran between Lady Quill's tent and the geek show. He hid around back, huffing with fright and exertion, peeking around the side of the geek show tent, waiting for the young couple to pass. The girl pulled her boyfriend into the alley, saying, "He went this way." Cy ducked out of sight. "It was probably just a mask," said the boyfriend. "It was not a mask. He blinked at me, Harold," she hissed. Had Cy blinked? He didn't think so. Then again, blinking was often involuntary. We are not always aware we are doing it. Although, in his shock at being seen, could he have blinked? Most definitely. Damn his eye. "There's no such thing as Cyclops, Mary. Come on. I want to do that strength thing. Show you how strong I am." He began to tug her away, but she resisted. "Help me find him," she cooed, "and I'll let you put your hand up my skirt." "Where are you, you one-eyed freak?" Cy, not having anywhere else to go, dropped to his stomach, peeled up a section of flap, and snaked underneath it and into the performers' area at the rear of the geek show. He came out, in, under the vanity in the corner, his feet slipping out of view just as the girl and her boyfriend rounded the corner. come out, wherever you are," the boyfriend sang, his voice drifting away as he and his girlfriend passed into the night. Come out, wherever you are. Here, piggy, piggy." And then they were gone. Cy could only see two sets of shoes from where he lay under the vanity, but couldn't say whom either pair belonged to. Could have been Blaze or Knuckles, he supposed, because neither one of them had Clay's stumpy, bowed legs. He twisted best he could and slithered once more from the tent. No sign of the young couple. He'd successfully given them the slip, thank God. From inside the geek show, Clay could be heard barking, "Up next, the Lizard Man!" Cy had never seen Papa's show, hadn't a clue as to what his dad did to entertain those who attended the geek show, and the boy's curiosity got the better of him. He couldn't go through the entrance. Whoever was ticket taking would spot him and give the alarm. If he wanted to watch the show, his only option was to once more slip under the tent's lower edge. But if someone came along, down the alley, he'd be spotted for sure, because he couldn't crawl all the way like he'd been able to around back. Decisions. He hadn't come this far and evaded detection by a pair of young lovers to quit now, so there was truly only one thing to do. He dropped to his belly and pinched a section of tent between thumb and forefinger and lifted it ever so slowly until he could see rows of feet. But that was all he could see, those feet. So he dropped the flap and slid up a few feet. He checked again and once more saw nothing but boots and shoes and a pair of 3-inch heels. Cy checked the alley one more time before he slithered up another 3 feet and lifted the tent flap. Got it. Papa was already on stage, bathed in the dim glow from the fairy lights overhead, his face shadowed by the black hood of his cloak. He wore gloves to conceal his scaled hands, and not an inch of his lizard's flesh could be seen. He stood stock still before the quiet crowd, the electric lights dimmed further, no doubt by someone off stage behind the curtain. A forked tongue slithered from the shadows of the hood, and a woman in the audience gasped. "Be not alarmed," cried Clay from somewhere out of sight. The lizard man is hungry, but not for human flesh. Clay parted the curtains behind Papa and stepped out onto the stage. He had a gray and white bunny by the ears and held it aloft for all in attendance to see. "It's feeding time!" Clay cried, and Papa flipped back his hood in one quick movement. "Witness the lizard man in all his terrible glory!" barked Clay, cackling like a mad scientist who just created life out of spare parts. The crowd reacted accordingly, oohing and awing, whispers and shouting all at once. "That's one ugly bastard!" some man near the back hollered. Papa hissed violently in the man's direction, and the heckler shut his trap. "Now, for your visual amusement, the lizard man will devour this poor little bunny, right before your eyes." "No," Sai said, low as he could. "Don't." Papa hissed once more before snatching the bunny from Clay's outstretched hand. Sai watched in stunned horror as his dad lifted the quivering creature overhead, tilted his skull back, and opened his fanged maw. A forked tongue tickled the bunny's feet, and it kicked, tried to flee. What happened next happened so quickly, Sai nearly missed it by blinking. Papa dropped the bunny into his mouth and swallowed. The bunny passed silently out of sight, didn't so much as squeak, and Papa's throat bulged massively as the bunny went down. Sai thought he saw a quick imprint of the bunny's hind feet kicking against the walls of Papa's throat before the whole thing dropped into his stomach. "No!" Sai screamed involuntarily. He scurried from under the flap and into the tent, shoving himself to his feet as he went, screaming, "No, Papa, don't!" Papa, in his shock, bucked and bent in two and regurgitated the bunny onto the stage. The stunned bunny sat in a wet lump on the plywood platform for an instant before bolting from the stage and racing through the forest of spectators' legs. People shouted and screamed and lifted their feet as the bunny fled, but once it was gone, it was all eyes on the strange anomaly of the boy in their presence. "Would you look at that?" said a man in the front row. "What the hell is he?" said another man from deeper in the crowd. "That's a goddamn Cyclops is what that is." "I told you I saw him. I told you." Suddenly, everyone was clapping and cheering, assuming Sai was simply part of the show. And then someone was lifting him, carrying him away. But for a brief moment, Sai experienced what it felt like to be the center of attention, to be the star of the show. And as he passed out of sight and the crowd booed over his removal, Sai wanted nothing more than to return to that stage. He wanted that very, very badly, more than anything else in the whole wide world.
What the hell were you thinking?
Papa yelled as he sat him down in the performers area. Clay followed close on Papa's heels, but the dwarf didn't seem angry at all when he said, "Did you hear him, boss? Did you?" Knuckles ignored Clay.
What were you thinking? Where's time? Why'd he let you out? Did you sneak out? Answer me.
I, Sai stammered. "Boss," Clay said, "they're going nuts out there. If we—"
"Shut it, Clay!"
Papa roared. Then to Sai,
"Did you sneak out? You did, didn't you? No way time let you out. What were you thinking?"
all the while the crowd chanted, "Cyclops, Cyclops, Cyclops." "Boss, they don't sound happy."
"I don't give a good goddamn how they sound. What were you thinking, Sai?"
Papa sounded like a broken record, and Sai, well, Sai found he couldn't speak no matter how hard he tried. He'd never seen his dad this angry. Papa's eyes glowed with a nasty fire that liquefied Sai's spine. I, Sai tried and tried, but nothing more would come out.
"Blaze!"
Papa hollered. "Here, boss," Blaze said, She'd been standing in one dark corner, watching Papa lose his mind, and when she stepped into the light, she looked more frightened than Sai felt. Her ginger hair was plaited and slung over one shoulder. The orange, the orange, yellow, and red sequin dress she wore sparkled beautifully in the subtle overhead lights.
Take him back to the train. This ain't over, little man. I'll deal with you after we close. You understand me?
Cyclops! 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 Yeah, yeah, yes, sir, Sai said in a quavering voice.
Blaze! Now!
Yes, boss. Blaze rushed forward and scooped Sai's hand into her own.
Here,
Papa said, yanking off his cloak and thrusting it at her.
cover him with this, for Christ's sake. Don't let anyone see him.
Yes, boss. Cyclops! 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 Boss? Said Clay. What are we going to do about the rubes? As Clay dragged Sai away out through the rear flaps, Papa raged on.
Do I look like I give a single shit about the rubes, Clay? Huh? Huh? Do I?
If you're just now joining us, I am reading from The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me, new pen name. You can buy a copy yourself down there in the doobly-doo. Amazon, you can get a paperback or an ebook. You can also get a signed copy from me. The reason the international is $100 because I don't know how much it's going to cost to send it to you. So once I send it, I will refund you whatever's left over. The international or the UK link is for everywhere outside of the US. Okie dokie. Cool. We cool? Good. Let's see here. Where was I? 3. Blaze didn't speak on the way back to the train. The fire breather wasn't much for talking anyway, but Sai wished she would say something, anything, just to cancel out the terrified thoughts cycling through his mind. He'd been foolish to think that the worst that could happen to him would be restriction from his toys and the solitude of jail time. He hadn't considered the ramifications of being caught while out and about, had only thought of what would happen once he returned to Father Time. Seeing Papa so angry had been worse than any other punishment he could imagine. Papa's disappointment burned in Sai's chest like a coal dropped into cotton batting. Father Time was coming down the steps from his car's rear platform when Blaze and Sai rounded the concession stand. Is that him? Father Time called as they approached. Blaze pulled back the hood to reveal Sai. Father Time rushed forward, dropped to his knees, and hugged the boy to him. Where the hell have you been? I've been all through the train twice, looking for you. I... Sai still couldn't form any words to defend himself, mostly because such words didn't exist, and should they be invented, they'd be nothing but excuses and lies. He snuck into the geek show, said Blaze. Father Time pulled away, keeping the boy at arm's length. You did what? I... Knuckles is mad, said Blaze. As he damn well should be, Father Time snapped, and Blaze recoiled. Sorry, Blaze. This ain't your fault. Thanks for bringing him back. Tell Knuckles I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Yes, sir. Good night. Blaze turned on her heel and fled. Sai wished he could flee with her. What were you thinking? Father Time echoed Papa's broken record questioning. Sai could only shake his head, couldn't even utter his I anymore. Get inside, now. Father Time released him, and Sai hesitated. Just a second, spurring Father Time to shout, I said now! Sai ran. He stomped up the steps, across the platform, and into the cabin car, where he waited on the claw-footed sofa for the geek show to end and Papa's inevitable arrival. Hours passed in silence while Father Time read through a book on accounting, and Sai sobbed tearlessly on the cushions. Every possible punishment passed before the eye of Sai's mind. His toys burning in a pile, him shackled to the wall of some dank, smelly dungeon, him on a torture rack while Papa cranked and cranked a lever, pulling Sai's limbs off one at a time, like a child maiming a fly. Nothing like that would happen. On some deep level, Sai knew this, but it didn't stop his overactive imagination from running wild with impossible repercussions for his actions this evening. In one horrifying scenario, Papa plucked his eye out, blinding him, and he woke up screaming, having no idea that he'd drifted off to sleep. He glanced around and found himself surrounded by judgmental faces. Mother Nurture, still in her ringmaster garb, Father Time with his accounting book tucked under one arm, Mom in her lady quill robes, all yellow and purple and shimmering, and, finally, Papa, his eyes no longer ablaze with fire, but smoldering with disappointment. "Nice of you to join us," said Mother Nurture. "Would you like to explain yourself?"
Yes, Papa said. Please do. I'd love to hear it.
I, Sai swallowed and tried again. I didn't mean to. Papa started to say something, but Mom placed a gentle hand on his forearm. "Sai?" Mom said, dropping to his level, knees bent in a catcher's stance. "What you mean is, you didn't mean to get caught. No, you listen. What you did was dangerous. Do you understand that? Going out without anyone's supervision? Well, anything could have happened to you. These people that come to our shows, they are here because we are different from them, and many of them fear that which is different. Something could have happened to you, and none of us would have known. You're special, Sai. Do you know that? Some would pay a high price for you, and they would keep you caged like an animal. Do you want that? To be taken away from us?" No," whined Sai. "Good," said Marianne, standing, "because we do not want that either. You are our responsibility, and we would do anything to protect you." "But," Sai struggled with his next words, partially because he was overwhelmed by a legion of conflicting emotions: fear, excitement, regret, and even joy. He chose to focus on the latter. "But they liked me!"
God damn it,
Papa hissed. "Knuckles?" Mother Nurture said, and that was all that needed to be said. Papa quieted down, but Sai could see he still fumed inwardly. Marianne said, "What do you mean they liked you?" "They did. Papa heard them. You can even ask Clay and Blaze. They heard them. They were cheering for me. Cyclops, Cyclops, Cyclops. Papa, you heard them."
I heard them all right. They were like sharks circling an injured seal, is what they were.
"No," Sai cried. "They liked me. They wanted to see me, Papa. They didn't want to hurt me. They just wanted a show."
You have no idea what they wanted.
Papa nearly spat the words. "Knuckles," Mother Nurture said, "you'll need to calm down. The boys had a rough night, as it is,"
I'll give them a rough night,
muttered Papa. You will do no such thing," Marianne cut in. "He is your son, and you will listen to what he has to say. Go on, Sai." "You should have seen them, Mom," Sai said, quaking now with excitement instead of terror. They were all so amazed by the sight of me. It was so neat. And then they started calling. Sai leaped to his feet and pumped his fist over his head. "Cyclops! Cyclops! Cyclops!" "You should have heard them. It was amazing." "I heard them," said Marianne with a small smile. "Couldn't help but to hear them. I'm right next door, remember? Oh, yeah. Well, then you heard them. It was so neat, Mom. Mother, it was amazing. I wish you and Father could have seen. They wanted me to come back out, but Papa had Blaze bring me back. I know what I did wasn't right.
That's an understatement.
Mother muttered Papa. Knuckles, warned Mother Nurture. I know I did a bad thing. I shouldn't have snuck out. I'm sorry about that. I am. I'm sorry I did that, Father and Papa. I'm sorry I let you down, but those people loved me.
I don't want to hear any more of this,
Hissed Papa.
You're lucky I don't take a belt to your hind end, like my daddy used to do me when I acted out of line.
You will not lay a hand, much less a belt, on that child, Reginald, Marianne said, and the gaze she set on Papa took all the wind out of his sails.
I wouldn't do that,
Papa said, almost shyly.
You know that.
You better not. She turned back to Sai, and her eyes softened considerably. Yes, Sai, you did a bad thing. You should have never snuck out, and I'm glad you realized that. As far as the rubes, well, you have some time before we'll be comfortable adding you to the show. Does that mean when I'm old enough? Sai's voice trailed off. Marianne glanced around. Everyone but Papa was nodding. Yes, Marianne said. When we think you're old enough, if you want to join the show, I don't see why. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Sai shot forward and embraced his mother. All right, let me go. Marianne wheezed, laughing. You're crushing my ribs.
You better hope nothing happens to him,
hissed Papa.
Why y'all are encouraging him, I'll never.
I saw what you did, Sai said to his father.
What exactly is that supposed to mean?
Said Papa, his incandescent eyes squinted suspiciously. To that bunny, said Sai. I saw what you did to that bunny. Nervous glances all around. Even Papa looked unsure. Sai, Marianne said, that was all part of the show, honey. He wasn't really going to eat that rabbit. I saw him eat it, Sai cried.
And you saw me spit it back up, too,
Papa said. But only because I scared you. If I hadn't, it would have died. No, honey, said Marianne. The rabbit's name is Harvey. He's the only rabbit we use. Well, if we can find him again. Your daddy would have regurgitated him as soon as he got off the stage. He does it every night. I promise. Have I ever lied to you? As if on cue, Clay hobbled in through the open rear door, carrying Harvey in the crook of one arm, saying, Found him! Told you the little bugger would come back. Clay handed the bunny to Papa, and Papa accepted him. Lovingly, he stroked his fur. See? Said Marianne. All's well that ends well. So, said Sai, you eat him and throw him up? Every night? He can't like that.
Does he look like he hates me for it?
Papa asked, lifting Harvey and allowing him to nuzzle his scaled cheek.
What do you say, Harvey? Would you like me to stop swallowing you?
The bunny, as if he understood exactly what Papa was saying, pawed at Papa's lower lip. Sai couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was like the bunny wanted to be swallowed again. It made no sense. I don't understand, was all Sai could think to say.
There's a lot about our jobs you don't know, and even more you'll never understand,
said Papa.
But, and this is a promise, we would never hurt another living thing. Not I, nor anyone else in this family. I swear it.
Does that make you feel better, honey? Asked Marianne. Sai didn't know how any of this made him feel, but he nodded all the same. He supposed he knew that, deep down, His family was comprised of only gentle souls. Well, maybe not Johnny Sandoval, but that man was something else entirely, an oddity even among oddities. And Cy figured that was only one of numerous reasons he'd been so shocked to witness Papa eat Harvey. He hadn't thought his father capable of harming such a cute, innocent creature. Ugh, my throat. How old do I have to be? Cy asked, before you'll let me join the show.
Not this again.
Hissed Papa. There is no definite age, Cy, said Mom. When you're ready, we'll know, is the best I can tell you. But, said Cy, why aren't I ready now? We'll know when you're ready, said Mom. Until then, you stay in this car while we're on location. Are we understood? Cy pouted. Yes, ma'am. Good. Then we're done here. Wait, that's it? You're not going to punish me? Said Cy, not knowing any better. I didn't say that. I'll figure out something for you to do as the consequences of your actions. Aw, Cy whined. Father Time laughed. Should have kept your mouth shut, kid. All right, break time. Okay, if you're just now joining us, I'm reading The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me, new pen name. You can buy a copy down below, either a paperback. This one, it won't have the weird line on it. This is my proof copy. Paperback and ebook on Amazon, or you can get a signed copy from me. If you're outside the US, you have to use the UK link. Doesn't matter if you live in England, Russia, Australia, any of those places. Yes, it is $100, but whatever I don't use to ship the book, I will refund back to you. All right. So I'm going to go take a 15-minute break, and when I get back, we will continue. Okay, I'm back. All right. Where were we? We were on chapter 3, subchapter 4, page 202 for anyone who's following along at home. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. We back at it. I'll do another hour, and then I'm gonna call it a night so I can go get dinner. 4. That night, as she tucked Cy into Knuckles' old bunk in the tent men car, Marianne asked the boy if he'd like her to tell him a story. Cy, still upset over their refusal to let him join the geek show now instead of later, pulled the quilt Mom had made him up to his chin and nodded solemnly. Once upon a time, Mom started, because all good stories started like that, or used some version of it, although, nowadays, talking about the present, from which we are currently writing this, once upon a time had been replaced with, see, what had happened was, hush, Zoop. Marianne began. There was a man called Heracles, known the world over for his strength. I've heard this one, Cy muttered in that oft-used tone of disgruntled children. I don't think you have, said Mom. Yes, I have. He fights a lion or something like that, but Mother Nurture called him Hercules. That's the Latin translation. His name in Greek was Heracles. May I continue? I even read several books about Cy. I promise you've not heard this one. Cy sighed at length. Marianne waited for him to roll his eye, could feel it coming, and when he did, she smiled softly and shook her head, saying, Heracles' mother, Hera, wife to the god Zeus, hated the boy because he was the product of Zeus's infidelity. Heracles was what is known as a demigod, the child of a god and a mortal. Told you I knew this one. Yes, but did you know he killed his wife and child? Sai bolted up wide-eyed. He did what? Ah, yes. We all know of his heroic journey, known as his 12 labors, but the storybooks don't always tell the darker truth, and I think you're finally old enough to hear about them. Shall I continue? Sai nodded in quick jerks and lay back down. Hera's hatred of Heracles started before the child was even born. She forced the goddess of birth, Ilithyia, to sit with her legs crossed with the hopes Heracles' mother, Alcmene, I'm not sure how to pronounce that actually, Alcmene, would be unable to give birth in the first place. Wow. She hated him when he was in his mama's belly? Yes. Then how was he born? Well, the midwives who were helping Alcmene deliver the child convinced Ilithyia that Heracles had already been born. So she uncrossed her legs, and Heracles came into the world. Smart, said Sai. Yes, the women in these tales often are, said Marianne with a smile. When Heracles became a young man, he moved to Thebes and married King Creon's daughter, Megara. Megara gave birth to 2 children, and for a time, all was well. But Hera wasn't done with Heracles. She cast a spell on the young man, driving him insane, and in his madness, Heracles murdered both Megara and his children. But why? Why? Marianne frowned. Because Hera drove him mad. I understand that, but how did he go crazy? Did she, I don't know, make him think they were evil? I suppose so. I honestly don't know the whys of the murders, only that he murdered them. That's really sad. It is. She truly did a number on him. No, I mean, It's sad that you know that he murdered them, but not why. Do you know the kids' names? Marianne thought for a moment, then said that she didn't. Yeesh. I don't know what's sadder, that you don't know why he killed them, or that you remember his name and not theirs. Are you sure you're only 6 years old? Marianne asked with a laugh. Cy shrugged. Your guess is as good as mine. Marianne laughed. True. Anyway, so back to Heracles. After murdering his wife and children, he traveled to speak to the Oracle of Delphi, who told him that he must complete his famous 12 labors as payment for his crimes. Now, here, some reports vary, but for the sake of our story, we will go with the story that Heracles left Thebes and journeyed to the city of Tiryns to perform his labors. The city of Tiryns was located in Argolis and was surrounded by massive walls. While there is much discussion about the origin of these walls, Greek mythology tells us that they were erected by Cyclops. Like me? Cy asked, his eyes sparkling with new wonder. Not exactly you, but perhaps your ancestors. See, the Cyclops of Greek mythology were giants, like dwarves in Tolkien's books. Like how Clay is a real dwarf, but there were mythical dwarves too. Hank and I were just talking about that. Exactly like that. What I think is that people like you were far more prevalent in old times. And because you are so special, by which I mean different than, say, myself or Mother Nurture, some people thought you must be capable of magic or something akin to it. Some even made your kind into monsters. People tend to do that when they are faced with the unknown, which brings me to the point of our story. The walls of Tiryns were there to protect the hill fort, and the stones used to build the walls were far too heavy for any man or mule to carry or drag, so stories were created to explain their building. Hence, giant cyclops. Who knows? Maybe one of the builders looked like you, and that's how the myth started. Unfortunately, we will never know. But my point is this, Sai. When you find out why the walls of Tiryns are important to your own life, then you'll be ready to join the Geek Show. That's not fair, the boy cried. Why can't you just tell me? Because this is for you to discover on your own. Consider it your one labor, and be happy I haven't set you on a path to complete 12 of them. She petted his cheek with the back of her fingers. You'll figure it out, my beautiful boy. You're smarter than you know. Have I ever been wrong before? Cy sighed. No, ma'am. Right. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow, you can start your research. Okay, he whined. Good night, Cy. Good night, Mom. That night, Cy dreamed of Amelia Earhart flying over a great expanse of sea in her airplane. From the depths of the ocean, a great man lizard who shared a striking resemblance to Papa reared from the water to snatch the plane from the sky, swallowing it whole, before splashing down into the waves and disappearing forever below the surface. Blah? What's blah? What's blah, Nick? Anyways, if you're just now joining us, I'm reading from The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me, new pen name. If you want a copy, links are down there in the doobly-doo. You get some more drink. Hashtag drink. 5. The carnival pulled up stakes 2 days later, and the train rolled on. Somewhere between North Dakota and Montana, something of note happened, which we shall discuss in detail now. Darkness scrolled by as the train chugged along, and Cy once again slept peacefully in his bunk, his dreams devoid of monstrous sea creatures whose likeness to his father was uncanny and terrifying. Sandoval slowed the train going through an old abandoned station, which was known as a squatting place for hobos who would sometimes erect their tents on the tracks in order to stop the train, making their boarding that much easier. The train slipped through the station at no more than 10 miles per hour, and when Sandoval saw nothing blocking the way, he pushed his beloved engine back up to 30. Sometimes we do things in order to skirt issues and end up creating problems anyway. This was one of those occasions. No, there had not been tents on the tracks, but there had been men lying in wait. 3 in all hobos, looking for a free ride. Once they had been the ones to place their tents on the tracks, but once conductors figured out their ruse, they stopped doing it. The result of this was that, like Sandoval, the conductors would slow down to keep from inadvertently killing any hobos sleeping on the tracks, giving the hobos the time to board the respective train. As the engine was passing the derelict station, the 3 men, all dressed in ratty brown coveralls, flannel shirts, and holey black boots, their faces smudged black with dirt and blackened by campfire smoke, broke from cover and dashed alongside the train. The one in the lead, a white man named Clark, who'd been out of work since 1933, when the tinning factory he'd worked for closed its doors forever, leaped onto the second car from the engine, one of the animal compartments, and ascended the ladder to the roof of the car. Clark's friend Dubose, a black man who'd never had a job in all his 24 years and had panhandled street corners ever since his single mother died of consumption in 1929, until the day he met Clark inside a tent city in Nevada, was next. One hand slipped on the rung and he almost went down, but he got his foot secured before he did and started climbing. The last of the trio of men, a white man named Reggie, whose wife had run off with a banker the year prior, but not before emptying the mattress of Reggie's life savings, leaving him destitute, jumped for the ladder right as the train lurched forward, gaining speed. He missed the rungs by nearly 5 feet and fell tumbling under the wheels of the train. Pieces of him would be scavenged by animals until there was nothing left of Reggie in the world that didn't resemble droppings. Reggie's friends, Clark and Dubose, heard the man cry when he fell and took the lack of any further screams as a testament to Reggie's fate. They would not mourn the death of their partner. They had no more grief left to give. Such was the life of a hobo. Loss and movement. On to the next one. Clark and Dubose slunk along the shuddering roof of the car, wind blowing wildly about them, climbing down one ladder to the platform between the cars, only to climb up the next one when they found the door to that car locked. They did this all the way across the length of the train until they reached the tentman's car and found its door unsecured. Clark turned the knob and eased the door open wide enough for thin Dubose to slither through. Then he opened it a bit wider, for Clark had a far more significant gut than his friend, and Clark followed Dubose in. Clark ran into something solid and nearly cried out in shock before realizing it was only Dubose's back. "Men," Dubose said in the dark. Clark listened to the grunts and snores of the tent men and figured Dubose's assessment was correct. "Some kind of circus is my guess," whispered Dubose. "Carnival," hissed Clark. "It's painted on the side of the car, dipshit. Call me dipshit one more time and you'll be knocking on hell's gates with Reggie. I'm gonna miss that shit hill. Yeah, well, he ain't missing nobody now. Check all the pockets you can find." Clark and Dubose searched the clothes hanging on the walls between the bunks. Together they found a silver watch, a pack of playing cards with nude women painted on them, more than a fair share of tobacco and cigarette papers, as well as the chewing kind, and about $40 in cash and coins, all said. "The hell is that thing?" Dubose said, pointing into Cy's bunk. He'd never seen the likes of it, and for a moment he thought his night-adjusted eyes were playing tricks on him. "That kid there, he ain't got but one eye. Hey, is that a fucking horn?" "Probably a mask. Keep a move on." Clark said in a low voice as he slunk past DuBose, headed for the rear door. Times like this, I wish I had me a goddamn camera, said DuBose, and got moving. Cy heard every word, but kept his eyes closed. Kept his eye closed. He'd heard the two men the minute they stepped into the car, and it was a wonder he hadn't cried out in fear. They smelled horrible, too, like wild animals who had bathed in excrement and sour cheese. The boy waited until the two men passed through the rear door before he got up and woke Anthony Duchamp. What do you want? Anthony grumbled. There's someone in the car, hissed Cy. It were just a dream. Go back to sleep, boy. No, it wasn't. They're here, Cy stage whispered. He supposed he could holler freely now that the men were gone, but what if they came back? He kept his voice low. Tony, wait, please, wake up. Go back to sleep, kid, Anthony shouted and rolled over. There would be no rousing Anthony, Cy knew, so he moved on to Barney Clark. But no matter how loudly he whispered, nor how hard he shook the roustabout with the red eye patch, Barney would not wake up. Damn it, Cy growled in the dark. If he waited any longer, the two men might make it to Mother Nurture's car, and there was no telling what they would do when they got there. Balling his fists to steel himself, Cy jogged to the rear door and exited the sleeper car. Along the way, he wished Papa were here, or Hank, but both men were on the road in their respective trucks, Papa in the one carrying the Geek Show stage and tent, and Hank driving the one he used to transport the Ferris wheel. He could go find Mom, but she was 4 cars in the opposite direction, in the sleeper she shared with Paper. He was on his own. So be it. He yanked the door open and stepped out onto the platform. The glass of the greenhouse car was opalescent to keep people from looking in when they were on location, but Cy could see 2 figures moving away from him through the greenhouse, vaguely human shapes, one a bit taller than the other. From his estimate, they were nearly to the next door. If he opened it now, the hinges would squeak. He knew the sounds of his on-rail home better than anyone, and the greenhouse car's doors squealed no matter how much they were greased. He waited until they reached the opposite door, and one of the men stepped to the side. Cy, assuming the man had sidestepped to open the door, waited a second longer, then tugged the forward door open and slipped inside. He entered at the same moment the 2 men closed the rear door behind them. They'd be in Mother Nurture's car in the next few seconds. He had to hurry. He rushed down the aisle between the flourishing plants, the glass walls of the greenhouse thrumming as the train rolled down the tracks, his head throbbing with noise and anxiety, and lurched to a halt when the rear door swung inward once again. Goddamn locked, said one of the men as they re-entered the greenhouse. Then, what's this? Cy was caught. Couldn't move. The man was looking directly at him, and his gaze might as well have been the gaze of Medusa for all of Cy's ability to move. Hey, little man, said the dark man in the open doorway. That ain't no mask, said the second man as he stepped in past his partner. You, Cy stammered, fought to compose himself. You aren't supposed to be here. Brave little bastard, said the darker one of the pair. You'd be pissing in your boots, Clark. Shut the hell up, said the man named Clark. Come here, kid. Cy managed to step backward. You make us chase you, said Clark, and I'll see just how well that horn of yours is attached. So when I says come here, I mean come. Cy spun and bolted. Feet stomped behind him. He'd barely gotten his hand on the forward door's knob when a pair of meaty paws landed on his shoulders. He squealed and tried to hang on, but the man, whichever one had his mitts on him, was too strong. Another hand grabbed his horn and wrenched his head back. Pain, the likes of which Cy had never felt, shot from his eye to his nape and down his spine. Agony. Pure, blazing agony. He screamed for help, even knowing no one would ever hear him, especially not between all these walls and over the sounds of the train. Still, he screamed for his life, yet until yet another hand. How many hands did these men have? Slapped over his mouth, muffling his cries. Horn's real. Told you it were real. What the fuck we gonna do with him? I reckon we throw him off. But look at him. Folks will pay a lot of money for a freak like him. How you suppose? Cy stomped, hoping he'd land on a foot, and actually did so. The owner of the foot grunted in pain, and the hands on his shoulders went away. He ducked, loosening his knees and dropping with all his weight. The hand on his horn slipped away, as did the one over his mouth. Bastard broke my foot! Cy scurried left on hands and knees, snaking under the tables that held the plant beds into the far aisle. Get him! Where is he? He's over here! Cy ran for the rear door. Something crashed behind him, and he could see, in his mind's eye, plants and herbs and flowers scattered everywhere as the two men leaped over the beds to reach him. He dropped again, slipping under the beds and into the row he'd just left. Get back here, you little... Cy wrenched open the rear door, and the squealing hinges cut the man off. Cy leaped from the greenhouse platform, across the connector bolt, and onto Mother Nurture's forward platform. His hand found the knob, but like the men had said, goddamn locked. Cy pounded on the door, screaming Mother Nurture and Father Time's names, one after the other, begging, pleading, hoping beyond hope that one of them would wake up and open the door. Got you, you bastard! The one called Clark growled from the open rear door of the greenhouse. You broke my goddamn foot, you little shit. Come here, so I can see how well that horn's attached. Cy turned and put his back to the door, kept banging with the ball of his fist, a high, terrified whine issuing from his throat. He shoved himself back as if he could phase through the very wood of the door and into Mother Nurture's car. Then, suddenly, he was falling backward into another pair of arms. Cy? What the... Who are you? Father Time. It was Father Time's voice. Son of a... was all Cy heard before Father Time threw him backward, farther into the car he shared with Mother Nurture. Cy stumbled and landed on his hind end. The impact clacked his teeth together, and he bit his tongue. Warm blood like pennies left out under the summer sun danced across his taste buds. Father Time slammed the door and rushed for the flared communication horn. Sandy! He called into the tube. Sandy! We got some men on board, 2 of them. Don't know if they're armed. Do what? Who? Sandy's tinny voice called back. You want me to stop? To Cy, Father Time said, Are they armed? Not. Cy swallowed blood, almost vomited. That I know of. The boy's tongue was thick in his mouth, his words slurred. They stole some stuff, though. Oh. Into the tube, Father Time shouted, No, I don't want them getting off. Wake everyone up. Get as many men as you can and bring them on. They're in the greenhouse right now. Be right there, Sandy called back, and the horn went silent. What's wrong? Mother Nurture was getting out of bed, roused by Father Time's hollering. Excuse me. Someone's on the train, said Father Time. Then, to Cy, how many? Do you know? Cy held up 2 fingers in the meager lamplight from Father Time's desk. Cy said they stole some stuff. I got Sandy waking folks up. Where's my gun? Under the bed, Mother Nurture said, getting up and out of the way so Father Time could retrieve his grandpa's shotgun from under the box spring. Be careful, Mother Nurture told her husband. I plan... The forward door burst open. Hinges and pieces of wood flew every which way. Father Time racked the shotgun and raised it just as a black man rushed into the car. Father Time fired. The black man took the load of buckshot to the stomach at nearly point-blank range and flew backward into his partner. Sai scurried away, sliding along on his rump, propelling himself with the pads of his palms. He hit the rear wall and sat there, panting, watching the gut-shot man writhe on the floorboards. Ow me! Groaned the white man from under his bleeding, struggling friend. Father Time racked the shotgun, took aim, said, "Don't move. You know what's good for you. You ain't gonna so much as breathe." "You're bleeding, goddammit! You're bleeding all over me, you bastard!" Excuse me. If you're just now joining us, I'm reading The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me, new pen name. You can get a copy of the book from Amazon, ebook or paperback, or you can buy a signed copy from me. Links are down there in the doobly-doo. I believe this is going to be the final chapter today because the next subchapter is long as hell. This one ain't short, but yeah. All right, here we go. 6. Curtis Townsend and 3 other tent men escorted the dying Dubose and his bloody partner Clark from the train. And by escorted, we mean tossed them off the platform and into the scrub that lay beside the track, but not before Anthony Duchamp and Father Time reclaimed the property the 2 men had lifted from their clothing. You sure you don't want to give him his 5 minutes alone?" Father Time asked Mother Nurture. Sai was sitting on the bed, listening to them, but not looking in their direction. "He's just a boy," said Mother Nurture, glancing at Sai. 5 minutes is tradition, but I'll leave it up to you. Your call. I'll back whatever you say." Mother Nurture considered this. Sai turned to face her, and she snatched her head around, pretending she hadn't been looking at him. How stupid must she think he was? He looked away again, and Mother Nurture continued, "No, he's a child. Let them go. Your wish, my command." "He needs a doctor," Clark called at the men from where he lay spread out in the dirt and brush before God and his kingdom. Father Time, over the barrel of his grandpa's shotgun, said, "You should have thought about that before you robbed us." Father Time backed through the door and into his sleeper car, closing and locking the door behind them. He called Sandy through the communication horn and told the man to get the train moving. The train lurched forward a few seconds later, accompanied by the clank of ties and connecting bolts. Once again, they were on their way. "You just gonna leave them out there?" Sai asked from where he sat next to Mother Nurture on the sofa. Marianne sat on the other side of him with her arm draped over his shoulders. "What were you thinking? Getting out of bed and going after them?" Mom asked. "They could have killed you," said Father Time. "Why didn't you wake one of the men?" "I tried," Sai hollered. "Barney wouldn't wake up, and Tony said I was dreaming." Father Time looked at Anthony Duchamp, who'd stayed behind after tossing the men off the platform. Anthony tucked his head and shoved his hands in his pockets. Didn't say a word, so Father Time prodded. "That true, Tony?" "I were half asleep, boss. I thought he was having one of them night terrors." "He's known to have night terrors, is he?" Marianne said. Anthony glanced at Marianne, then went back to staring at his shoes. "That's what I thought," said Marianne. "Maybe next time you'll listen to the boy." "Yes'm," Anthony said. "You can go," said Father Time. Anthony Duchamp nodded and took his leave. "I was scared they were going to hurt you," Sai told Mother Nurture. She petted his nape. "Father Time wouldn't have let anything happen to me, Sai." "The boy's got a point," said Father Time. "They'd have been on us before I even got out the bed. If he hadn't come busting down our door, well, I don't know what would have happened." "Did you have to shoot him?" Sai asked Father Time. Father Time stepped forward and dropped into a catcher's stance in front of the boy. He met Sai's eye and said plainly, "You saw the whole thing. Did I have any other choice?" Sai shook his head, his meager horn twisting like a politician's wave. I didn't want to hurt that man, I promise you. But, as you already agreed, I didn't have a choice. But he wasn't armed. Doesn't take a man being armed for him to be able to hurt someone. Men can kill with their bare hands, son. That's just the truth of it. I guess, Sai said and broke eye contact. Then, that man needed a doctor. Sai, I'm going to shoot straight with you. Sai cringed at Father Time's choice of words. I hope that fella bleeds out alongside those tracks. I hope he dies, and I hope he does so that he can't try and hurt nobody else. Takes the devil to kick down a door like that, and it takes an even greater evil to chase a child the way he done. So yes, I hope that fella dies in a whole world of pain. Sai considered this and saw both sides, which would be his curse for all his days. Yes, Father Time had done what he had to keep him safe and to protect Mother Nature. But he also wondered what had driven that man to such violent acts in the first place. How low must one descend to be capable of such violence and aggression? Sai didn't know, and it would be decades before he, himself, knew such a low point. For now, he was but a child under the care of family that was, quite literally, prepared to kill for him, should the need arise. We need to get you back to bed, said Marianne, standing. She offered Sai her hand, and he took it. She led him out of Mother Nurture's car, through the greenhouse, and back to the tent men's car. As she tucked him in, she said, What you did, that was really brave of you. You could have been hurt, and I don't condone what you did, but Father Time's right. Those men might have killed the both of them had you not done what you did. I'm proud of you. You aren't mad at me? Marianne laughed. Of course I'm mad at you, but you can be mad and proud at the same time. I've come to realize that's a mother's curse. You know, you know, I'm going to have to tell your father. Sai dropped his head. Yeah, I know. He won't punish you, but he might have some stern words for you. And you'll take them in stride, and we'll move on from this. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Marianne gently kissed his horn. Try and get some sleep. Mom? Yeah? I was really scared. I know that, hon. Do you want me to sleep in here with you tonight? Sai shook his head, said, I'll be okay. But I wasn't finished. What I meant to say is, I was really scared, but I couldn't let nothing bad happen to Mother Nature. Or Father Time, right? Does it make me a bad person if I said I never even thought about him? Marianne gave him a wan smile. We all have our favorites, Sai. Some parents have favorite children, and most people have favorite siblings or friends. But by wanting to save Mother Nature, you also saved Father Time. It's not like you saved her and ignored him. If we thought about everyone close to us all the time, well, I don't think any of us would ever think about ourselves. And it's important to think about ourselves every now and then. Marianne paused for a moment, then continued. Do you know what cognitive dissonance is? Sai said he did not. It's when two conflicting truths or facts in our minds at the same time. For instance, I'm proud that you thought of Mother Nature. And if I had to allow you to do it again, Marianne sighed at length. I suppose I would let you. But I always believe I would have been perfectly fine had something horrible. Hang on. I lost my place. Okay. But I always believed I would have been perfectly fine had something horrible happened to her if that meant you remained safe. That is cognitive dissonance. I know you did the right thing, but another part of me is very angry you put yourself in danger to do it. That doesn't make me a bad person, it makes me human. Does that make sense? Sai nodded. He was silent for a time, prompting Marianne to ask, "What's going on in that head of yours?" "Why?" Sai trailed off. "Go ahead. You can ask me anything, you know that." "Why didn't you see this coming?" Sai asked with the innocence of the child he was. Marianne was nonplussed over this. His question had taken her aback, and she warred internally with how much truth to reveal. In the end, she decided on the unfettered truth. If I paid attention to every warning sign I get from my cards, I'd never leave my car. Hell, I might not even leave my bed. The world is a scary place, and sometimes you just have to have faith that everything will work out in the end. What happened tonight, I. She struggled with the next part for some time, and Sai kept quiet until she spoke again. I might have seen what happened tonight, or the shadow of what was to come. 3 men hiding in the dark beside an abandoned building as our train passed. 3 men becoming 2. The third dying horribly. The 2 men carrying on without him, and, well, I turned it off. But that was ages. That was long ago, ages ago. And that's what makes my gift a curse at times. I never know when something I'm shown will come to be. The cards do not give me dates. If they did, I'd be a gambling woman. She laughed in order to bring some levity to the discussion, but Sai didn't seem amused. Do you? Again, he trailed off. Go on, she nudged. Do you know how I'm going to die? Marianne licked her lips, for they were suddenly dry. Then she shook her head. If I have been shown that day, I have chosen to ignore it. She petted his cheek with the back of her hand, as she so often did. He pushed against her fingers, gently, in return. Now try and get some sleep. For me. Yes, ma'am. I love you, Sai. I love you too, Mom. Marianne stood and walked between the rows of bunks, feeling eyes watch her as she passed. Haunting, accusing eyes. It was as if every tentman knew she had lied to the boy and wished to shame her for doing so. And, truth be told, she would have deserved it. Alright. I think I can do one more subchapter. It's only 8 pages. So we'll do one more and then I'll call it for the night. 7. Years passed. 2, to be exact. And that hateful little man with the funny mustache in Germany invaded Poland around what had been ordained as Sai's 7th or 8th birthday. No one was truly keeping track. Suddenly, the world was at war again. So much for the first one being the one to end all of them. It became increasingly obvious that Sai's biology was significantly different than anyone had previously realized. The 7 or 8-year-old had grown to an astounding 5'3" by 1939, and his intellect trended in the same direction. He was reading upwards of 5 books a week, and not short ones either. Books like War and Peace and the Brothers Karamazov and Moby Dick. He'd inherited Ulysses from paper, was currently halfway done with the tome after only a day of reading, and was enjoying it immensely. Marianne barely kept up with the boy's growth spurts. She spent the majority of her downtime expanding seams and patching holes in seats where his rear end would burst through at even the expectation of him bending over. Because of this, Sai looked like a vagabond most days, wearing clothes that resembled quilts. Father Time had argued that they had plenty of money to buy the boy new clothes, but Marianne declined the offer, seeing no reason to waste money on apparel Cy would outgrow in a week. She thought constantly about how big he would be by the time he stopped growing, and shivered at the idea that puberty was still years in the boy's future. What Marianne didn't know, because she'd stopped supervising his bathing and dressing around the time he started talking, was that puberty had already started. Cy felt like every day there was new hair growing somewhere, and he'd already experienced his first wet dream. Although he was unique in almost every other way, the boy shared the shame of every child during life's varied and multiple changes. So he had not discussed his hair growth and nightly leakage with anyone. Instead, he read Mother Nurture's medical texts and deemed himself utterly normal in that regard, despite the fact that puberty had come on far earlier than it did in most children. In Salt Lake City, while the carnival was still being erected for that weekend's opening, Cy walked the concourse. Ulysses held aloft, his keen peripheral vision reading every page speedily, while still maintaining focus on the ground upon which he strode. This gift, this ability to see everything clearly, as long as it was within his field of vision, was another anomaly no one, not even Mother Nurture's medical texts, could explain. The biggest oddity was this: human beings with two eyes lost a great deal of the peripheral vision if one eye was removed from the equation. Why then was his one eye so adept? Was it the lack of the second eye since birth? Something akin to how a blind person's sense of touch, smell, and hearing is heightened to make up for the lack of sight? He didn't know, and tried not to ruminate on the matter too much. He was who he was, and he loved who he was. His family had taught him that much, leading by example, if not stating it as much implicitly. The grating, screeching sound of metal on metal drew his attention to the geek show tent. He altered course and ducked through the flaps to find Clay on stage, sharpening his claymore with a whetstone. When Cy entered, the screeching stopped, and Clay looked up with a wave in Cy's direction. "How goes it, little man?" welcomed Clay. "Not too bad, big guy." They shared a laugh. Such was their way. Over the years, Cy had grown closer to Clay than he'd ever imagined he would, seeing in the dwarf a kinship that came with being so different with regards to height from all the other members of their traveling carnival. Cy was overly large for his age, and Clay was significantly shorter. How size separates us was something Cy had noticed around the age of 7, when he'd shot up past Clay, whom he now towered over, 5'3" to Clay's 3'5". Clay's claymore, a sword that had been invented specifically for sweeping the legs from horses during battle, was over 4 feet long, nearly a foot taller than Clay was, but the man was able to make the blade vanish down his throat all the way to the hilt with ease. Where the excess blade went was anyone's guess. Like Blaze's gift to spit fire without the aid of open flame or accelerant, and Papa's reptilian appearance. Clay's sword swallowing was a gift no one questioned. Such was their way. "What are you up to today?" asked Clay. His voice was high and musical, and Cy loved to hear the man speak at any length. "Reading, I suppose." "Stupid question. You're always reading." "Yep, almost done with this one." Cy held his battered, hand-me-down copy of what was considered by most scholars to be the first modern novel and waggled it. "It's really good." "I'll wait for the movie," Clay said with a chuckle. "What brings you in today?" "I heard you tinkering with your sword, so I thought I'd drop by to watch. Don't mind me." "Fair enough. Have a seat." Clay gestured to the front row. Cy sat down, his book still held aloft, his thumb flipping pages effortlessly after years of practice, and continued to read while he studied Clay sharpening his massive instrument of war. War had been on Cy's mind a lot lately, what with the new conflict in Europe. Men were dying by the thousands overseas, yet here he was, his carnival family included, pressing on with everyday life, as if nothing bigger than their own existence was occurring in the world. He supposed they were doing the best they could by entertaining people throughout such a dark time. He'd overheard Mom tell Papa last month that America would join the fray before all was said and done. Excuse me. And not for the first time, Cy hoped she was wrong, although, in his experience, she never was. Hank's stories of his time during the Great War were far more upsetting than any of the horror literature Cy had read. Dracula, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, the King in Yellow, The Monk, The Turning of the Screw, The Dunwich Horror. They all paled by comparison to the real terrors of the world. Cy would sit wide-eyed and rapt on the steps leading up to the Ferris wheel, listening to Hank recount tales of trench warfare while he greased his mighty wheel. Tales of bodies reduced to hamburger meat, arms and legs blown off, heads blasted from their necks, bullet-ridden corpses piled higher than the walls of the trenches in which the soldiers had perished. But one of the most disturbing stories Hank had told was an instance where Hank had suffered a nasty case of trench foot. Hank had said that the foot had become as white as freshly laundered sheets, his normally dark brown skin reduced to near transparency. The flesh withered and gray and wrinkled to the point that he couldn't stand, much less march along with the war machine that was the United States Army. He'd spent 3 weeks in a medical tent, hearing a British doctor and his nurses debate the necessity of removing the foot, as if Hank weren't right there, as if he couldn't hear them discussing the fate of his foot from less than 3 feet away. It was during this time that Hank began calling his cigarettes fags, he said, because the doctor had always been stepping out for a fag here and a fag there, then returning several minutes later to Hank's bedside, smelling of cheap tobacco. Hank said the doctor's left index and middle fingers were stained a deep yellow, bordering on brown, but not at the tips. The staining had occurred between the base of those fingers and the first knuckle, making it clear to Hank where the doctor held his fag when he smoked. How he never burnt the webbing there puzzled me greatly, Hank had said, his gaze far away and seemingly absent of thought, although Cy could nearly see and smell the images as Hank recalled them in his mind. The doctor's browning fingers, the stench of smoke. Why'd he call them fags? Cy had asked. Hank had nodded once and said, Good question. I asked him the same thing. He said it comes from the term faggot, what they call a bunch of sticks used to start a fire. Makes sense, I suppose. Hank said with a queer look on his face, a look that said he understood the terminology, even if it still puzzled him to some great extent. Cy came to the end of Ulysses and closed the book. He sat in on the seat next to him and folded his hands in his lap, rolled his neck, and cringed as his vertebrae crackled like wrung plastic. Good book? Clay asked, still sharpening his sword and having to raise his voice to be heard because of it. I think so, said Cy. Doubt it'll ever be a movie. Why do you say that? Too much going on in the heads of characters? The movie would be nothing but inner dialogue. It'd be better to leave it a book. That's that Joyce fella that Quill hated so much, right? Clay said, drawing his whetstone down the length of his sword, which lay across his legs like a bit of knitting. Yeah, Paper didn't like it either. You tell him how much you were enjoying it? Not yet. I wanted to finish it first. Last time I brought up a book I was reading that they'd already read, they spoiled the ending for me. Monsters, said Clay. That's why I don't read them reviews in the paper for the movies I fancy to see. They're always giving the good parts. They're always giving away the good parts. What's that one about? Clay pointed to the book where it sat in the chair beside Cy. Not sure yet. Clay barked laughter, said, You read all them pages and you don't know what it's about? It's not that kind of book. It's one of those you have to think about. See? Said Clay. That's why I don't read too many books. Thinking hurts me brain. But I don't shame no one who does read 'em. To each their own, as the saying goes. The curtains behind Clay parted, and Bull stepped through, all 300 pounds and 6'6" of him, shirtless and glimmering with diamonds of sweat. He was as bald as always, with his thick mustache waxed into question marks at the corners of his thick upper lip. A length of solid iron rod was twisted around his neck like a scarf. The strong man had obviously been practicing his act. Gentlemen, Bull greeted them. Hey, Bull, how's it hanging? Said Clay. Long and strong and full of wrong, my friend. How goes it, Si? Just finished a book, so it's a good day so far. I have been stuck on an Agatha Christie book for the past week. Agatha Christie? Asked Cy honestly. That's him. Her, Cy corrected. Him, her, what does it matter? They are a horrible writer. Not my thing either, said Cy. He tried one of the he tried one of the prolific author's books, one whose title would be changed along with the times, thrice in total, to skirt the offense of society, and had found it trite and boring. He preferred a stronger narrative voice than Christie's and less plot. He'd much rather read a book with deeply developed characters wherein nothing much happened. He despised twist endings, found them cheap and forced more often than not. You hear about the new blood? Bull asked the pair. New blood? Cy asked. I heard tell that we might be bringing some new folks on while we were here. Something about a cooch show, said Clay. That's the one, Bull said. Cooch show? Cy said. He'd never heard the term before. None you should be worried about, little man. Not yet, anyhow, said Clay. This one's for us menfolk. Clay shot a smile at Bull, and Bull grinned widely in return, then said, They just got here. Paper's showing them over to the office now. Cy, overburdened with curiosity, which seemed to be his perpetual state of being, rushed from the tent, Clay calling out after him, Hey, that's none of your business. Okay, yeah, I can go one more. 8. Cy hid just outside the door of the caboose on the rear platform, his back to the wall, listening to Mother Nurture and Father Time interview the 5 women Cy had seen enter the car after leaving the Geek Show tent. He'd hidden between the fried everything and fresh lemonade booths until papers showed the women inside and then took his leave, heading back toward the Geek Show. The women had all been dark of skin, but lighter in complexion than, say, Hank was. All were dressed in long, flowing robes of silk, with lacy veils covering their noses and mouths. Cy assumed an Arab or Desi ethnicity, but he was no expert on the subject of race. The women did, however, share a likeness to the scantily clad woman on the cover of Mother Nature's copy of Tales from the Arabian Nights, which only bolstered his assumption. During the interview upon which he spied, he found he was wrong on all accounts. They were neither Arab nor Indian. We are Egyptian, said one of the women after Father Time questioned their citizenship. Proudly from Egypt. I only ask, Father Time continued, for your safety. We have numerous undocumented employees. Makes no difference to us, but if we're ever raided, We need to know who to hide. We understand, said the same voice from before. And your dancers? Asked Mother Nurture. Erotic dancers, it says here? Yes. We specialize in the arousal of men for the purpose of their amusement, said the same voice. But Sai, once more overwhelmed by the need to know, had peeked around the edge of the door and seen who had spoken. As they were all seated on the sofa, in profile, both Mother Nurture and Father Time sitting in velvet wingback chairs across from them. But then, as Sai watched, perplexed, the same voice issued from the mouth of a different woman entirely, saying, We require no payment. We only wish to entertain. Sai blinked. Now this was interesting. He snatched away from the edge of the door lest he be seen. I'm sorry, said Father Time. You want to work for free? Their silence suggested nodding. I I don't understand, said Father Time. You'll need to pay for your space rental, food, and lodging. We can't just let you travel with us for free. I hope you under. We are aware. We require no profit from what is made at the door. The enjoyment of the men is all we request. We are very good at what we do. Let me get this straight, just so we're clear here. Father Time said, You don't want to make a penny from your act, but you don't mind if we make money off it? Is that right? More silence made Sai once again think that the women were nodding. Well, I'll be damned, Father Time said with a chuckle. Doesn't that beat all? It does, said Mother Nurture without a shred of amusement in her voice. She was as suspicious of these women as her husband was. That much was clear to Sai by her tone alone. Mother Nurture continued, saying, May I ask why? You may, said all five women in tandem. Silence. Sai giggled, knowing that the women were waiting for Mother Nurture to ask why, and she finally did, but not until after a long pause, in which Sai tried his best not to burst into guffaws. Okay, said Mother Nurture. Why don't you want payment? It is not our way. We profit enough from the amusement of men. We require nothing else in life. Huh, was all Father Time said. Excuse us a moment, said Mother Nurture. Sai knew what that meant. He leaped from the platform and twirled around the corner, pressing his back to the side of the train, then shimmying down a ways. If either of them stepped off the platform, he'd pretend like he was reading, or he would have, had he not left his book back inside the geek show. Damn it. Mother Nurture and Father Time did not come down the steps from the platform, though, and Sai could hear them clearly from where they stood, talking just outside of the rear door. What do you think? Asked Mother Nurture. They're unique, to say the least, said Father Time in a low voice. Sai thought that the women inside must surely be able to hear them if he could, and he hoped nothing was said to offend them. He really wanted to see them dance, although he wasn't sure why. Some base instinct shouted from the back of his mind, necessitating his viewership. Do you trust them? Asked Mother Nurture. I don't trust anybody until they've proven they should be trusted. You know that. So I guess the question is, do you trust them? I don't know. Something they said is bothering me. That bit about how the amusement of men is payment enough. Should we ask them to explain? I don't see why not. Sai! What are you doing? Sai went stock still, his neck craned around, facing forward, to find Mom approaching the caboose in long, elegant strides. I was just trying to find my book. Can't remember where I left it. Marianne closed the distance, grabbed him by the wrist, and pulled him away. Sure you were. Clay told me you ran out of the tent to see those cooch girls. You know better than to lie to me. I was just curious, I swear. Cy squealed as she dragged him on. He glanced over his shoulder before disappearing into Lady Quill's tent and saw Father Time and Mother Nurture watching them from the platform of the caboose. They were both laughing. Alright, that's good for today. Hell yeah. If you're following along at home, we are stopping at Chapter 3, Subchapter 9, page 224. All right, let me get these things off. It's starting to give me a headache. Because I can see the text just fine while I have my glasses on, but anytime I look at literally anything else, it just gets blurry and weird. So they're just regular ass reading glasses. +2 strength. So +2 magnification. Anyways, thank y'all for joining me. Once again, I was just reading from The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. That's me. New pen name. You can also check out the Edward Lorn stuff, but I'm really, really pushing this one. I need to sell 1,000 copies by April to make sure I get the next book out by December. I will be reading this again unless something happens. You know, we do these things on the fly. I will be reading, hopefully, again Wednesday. This coming Wednesday, which is what, the 19th, I think? Yeah, it's the 19th. Anywho, in between then, we will have not in between then, but you get a new review next week, and we'll probably do a hangout and chat at some point in time anyways. But yeah, that's everything. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Links are down there in the doobly-doo. You can buy a signed copy directly from me. Just follow the links down there. If you're wondering why the international shipping is $100 or the whole thing is $100, it's because once you buy it, I will refund you the cost. I will refund you whatever I don't use to ship the book. So it's not going to be $100. It might if you live in Australia, but I think that's the worst one. It's like $75 to ship to Australia. Anyways, thank you all for joining me. I'll talk to you guys later. But until next time, I have been E. You have been you. This has been another episode of The Last Freak Show, Book 1, Flame and Fortune by S.E. Johnson. New pen name. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.